Okay, good morning, folks. I hope you can hear me. You should be able to see my charts or the green screen. We're going to get started right about now. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I want to, JOLTS has been, I want to be truthful. I was totally, let's get started. Welcome. My name is Lee Goldstein. Welcome to the 10-Minute Trades Trade Room for the JOLTS Report. That's me. I'm originally from New York. I live in Pennsylvania, and I teach people to trade the futures markets. Please remember, all trades we discuss are for educational purposes. It is possible to lose money trading futures. So we've got two different, right now the market is opening, so there will be some volatility before the JOLTS report. So that's okay. We wait, the market's going to calm down before JOLTS. Amazingly, the NASDAQ it's only down 20 points. It's not like up or down 100 points, but that could change in a matter of minutes. So I want to welcome anybody that's out there watching us on YouTube. Thank you very much. Give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the bell so you know when we're going to be streaming again. We do this all the time, pretty much 3 to 4 times a week. Just keep in mind that YouTube streams are slightly delayed. I might not want to trade live real money from a YouTube stream, but certainly the education is there. So the JOLTS report, I was pretty excited. I thought for sure I'd be trading it live. Chantal spent a tremendous amount of time doing a lot of testing, and sometimes the testing that's visual doesn't always translate superbly well to replay or to live. And I just want to be truthful. This JOLTS report has been inconsistent for years. I've never been able to find, it's only about 2 years old, I think, this report, but I've never been able to find a consistent setup. And I'm still not 100% confident that we have two setups that we think are good. But I made a note in my notes that they both require a little bit more testing. And as you know, I've said a million times, the best kind of testing is live market data. And there's two different setups that we have. We've got an NQ setup, and we've got a trap trade on gold. Part of the problems with the trap trade is the speed of the report and the size of the report. Sometimes it just does not move soon enough or large enough to make the trap trade all that exciting and confident building. The NQ has had some good moves, but there certainly has been some inconsistency in the results. So last month we tested our setups and they looked very good. And then I went back further and did some more testing, and there was still a moderate amount of inconsistency. The trap trade, because you're using a 25 tick stop and you're using 2 orders above and below the price, your potential for a loss is a $500 loss because you're 2 contracts, 25 ticks each. I don't feel really strongly that this trade is worth, this report is worth that much of a risk at this point, unless it really shows that it's going to work. Now, there are ways you can cut that risk in half by, you can trade the trap trade half the size. Now, I know some people out there, they don't know what the trap trade is, or they're confused. What's the trap trade? We have a software strategy, and our software strategy has multiple methods of entering and creating a setup before the report. One of our setups is called the trap trade. The other setup is the JOBB version 9, which has a breakout trade. If you look at the different trade types, we've got a breakout trade, a range trade with zones, a manual range trade, which we call the one click, and we have a reversal trade and a squeeze play. There's a lot of different setups that our software can support, the most popular being the breakout trade. With gold, our setup, our test setup for gold is the trap trade. We had been trading gold as a breakout. We've been trying gold as a breakout on JOLTS, and it just has never been consistent. So I'm not interested really in trading gold as a breakout for JOLTS. It just has not given us the look of a setup that wants to give you lots of profit. The NQ setup looks promising. The NQ obviously is moving quite large these days, but the NQ does move on a lot of news. The tricky part about the NQ is its low liquidity sometimes, so you can have slippage. And it's just prone to jerking back and forth because that's what the NQ does. It jerks around quite a bit. So you have to have a good setup with a good sized bracket. And I'll show you what I mean about a bracket so that it will keep you safe. I mean, that's really the issue. You don't want to get filled too early, because sometimes the news these days has been released inconsistently also. So let's set up the gold trap trade. And the gold trap trade, you've got to wait at least a minute to get filled and 2 minutes for the reversal to take place. The concept in a trap trade is you go down to trading, ignore contraction, we don't use it. Okay, in fact, I'm getting it removed from a slight update I'm making to the trap trade software. We're going to get it so it's clearer and easier to understand. So if you go down to trading, the bracket center is price at the time, and the stop loss position is not average price, but it should always be last fill price. Position size is just how many contracts you're trading. It's going to be 1 and 1. Position size 2 is, for some reason, the programmer set it for 2, but it really should be 1. I'm getting that changed also, so that the default is 1. Wait for spike just has to do with where the stop is placed on the chart, so that if there is a spike, you have a stop. In the old version of the trap trade, we didn't even have a stop for the first 5 seconds. We changed it so it would be safer. So from trading down, bracket center is price at the time. I'm setting up a trap trade with 1 position and position 2. So a total of 2 contracts, 2 different prices above and below the current price. Average price bars is a default. It doesn't get changed. Stop loss position is the last fill price. And then the testing we did was a stop of 25, which is rather big for gold. Because keep in mind that's 250 per contract. Now, I also did some testing with a stop of 20. It may be that the stop of 20 is probably safe. But for now, until I go over the testing even further, right now, that's our testing stop. The tiers is a fancy way of saying the orders that we place on the chart. There's going to be two of them, 1 and 2, and one's going to be 20 ticks and one's going to be 30 ticks away from the current price. And that current price is going to take place 20 seconds before 10 o'clock. The entry time of every trap trade is the time of the report. 10 o'clock is the time of this report. So entry time is 10 o'clock. But we have something called order preparation, where the orders get placed on the chart X amount of seconds before the entry time. So 20 seconds before the entry time, it is possible to adjust your trap trade orders. And normally the concept is you're adjusting the orders around support and resistance. And we also have an adjust button that if there's pre-trade volatility, you can hit the adjust button and it will help you to get a better fill. That was the concept. That concept is less important right now because the markets are so volatile that we have not been taking as much time to prep the trade. In other words, we're putting the trap trade on much closer to the entry time. In the old days, sometimes you could take 45 seconds prior to the entry time to adjust your orders. When the markets are so volatile, you don't get that luxury, because if you put your orders on the charts too early, the possibility that you might get filled before the news comes out can happen. And you generally don't want to get filled before the news comes out, because then it's just a coin toss. You don't know if the news is going to be good or bad, and it could very strongly affect whether or not how the direction the trade's going to go in. So obviously, the idea is not to get filled early. So the setup for the trap trade is one position, price at the time for bracket center, one position for position 1, one position for position 2. Stop loss position is called the last fill price. Stop loss ticks is 25, and then my tiers. Tier 1 is 20 ticks. Tier 2 is 30. Let me just get my notes and make sure I'm reading the right stuff. Yep. Okay. And we are supposed to wait 2 minutes for the reversal. So that's the trap. And it will not put the orders on the chart until 20 seconds before 10 o'clock. Now, I prefer to have the whole screen to adjust my orders, etc., but it's important to see the news also. So that would be our trap trade setup. You can see the market's calming down now from 9:30. The NQ setup is a breakout that we've been testing. And last month it worked very nicely. The month before, it was a little bit more troublesome. So I need to build my own personal confidence in our setups, because this has been a report that for years has been inconsistent. Now, if we have setups that are going to work, we'll start to see them work as we test them. One of the most interesting things about a trap trade is, more often than not, when you test it, because it's a trade that it fills in opposite directions. In other words, the concept behind the trap trade is the price goes up, you're getting filled short. You're getting filled on the downside. So there's very little slippage generally. So a test of a trap trade is very accurate. Unless it's so fast that there could be slippage, and you'll know when a trade is so fast that your testing has to be double checked. But the nice thing about testing trap trades is that they're quite accurate. And they have been pretty slow on this particular report. And that's why I'm not like jumping into a $500 risk on the JOLTS report. It's a report that honestly, it seems like it should be a much more important and impactful report, but the market seems to me the market never embraced this report like it embraces, say, the ADP report or the regular jobs report, of course. It's just a report that we're kind of waiting for it to find its life. And sometimes reports don't. They sometimes just stay small in terms of their impact. Now, the NQ, the testing we've been doing, was a breakout. And before I forget, folks, you all can do me a great, great favor. I have a webinar this evening at 7:20. If you register for it, it really is great for me and the company. I'm going to just be talking about the usual thing that I talk about in our webinars, the reports, finding reports, how to find trades, calendars. It's a refresh for most of the folks that are in here. But it's really, really good for us if you come, if you register. And if you don't have time to come, you can always watch the recording. Here's the link. I hope. Yep, that's the link. It's called Festival of Traders. There's a whole bunch of other people also. There's always something interesting to learn. Thanks, Mike. All right, so the NQ setup. And then we will be back this afternoon. Don't forget for API at 4 o'clock. My NQ setup is a first target of 12 ticks. Although what's interesting is today, NQ is pretty darn quiet. 12 ticks. I'll still do 12 ticks, which isn't that big. But usually our testing is like 35 to 50 ticks on the second target. And I'm just going to go for 25 today. I'm really looking for a setup that works reliably. And in my testing, I've had a bunch of tests that hit the first target, struggled to get to the second target. The stop is 25 on the NQ. And because of volatility, the bracket is 25. That's a very large bracket on the NQ. But because of the way these markets have been moving, you know, where some mornings we've woken up to the NQ being 150 points up or down, a 25 tick bracket, it's not very much. It's 4 points, 5 points plus a tick. Let's see, it's 6 points, 24 plus a tick, 6 points plus a tick. Not that much in relation to 150 points, right? So our bracket, 25 ticks. And what's the worst that'll happen? You won't get filled. Well, the worst that'll happen is you get stopped. Second worst that happens, you don't get filled. So one position for 12 ticks, one position for 25 ticks, a stop of 25. And then our entry time that we've been testing is 10 o'clock. That's what we did last month. And you need to label this. Okay. And I should label the gold trade better. It just says GC trap, but I'd like it to say GC JOLTS trap. Watch up here when I change the name. GC JOLTS. Okay, now we're going to check our sync, our time sync. We check our time sync by going to the website time.is. Now you can see that I'm a headset lunatic because all the things I've looked at recently in Amazon, headset, in-ear monitors, headset, Bluetooth headset, in-ear monitors, and a phone. So, I mean, you could look and see. I mean, I'm not embarrassed to show the websites that I go to because I'm a very normal, nice person, actually. I go to Twitter, I do tech support, Google, 10-minute trades, PG Music, which is a great music program that I use. Anyway, time.is, it puts my computer in sync. And last month, we had a very nice test of this report, but I would have traded this live 100%. But when I went back and kept testing and testing and testing, replaying a fair amount of the testing was not as perfect as last week's trade. So, given the history of this report, honestly, it's been years of inconsistency. And really, we just discovered a potential working setup. There's no harm. My boss, who creates the DMMs, wants 4 to 6 tests before he'll actually generate a DMM for us. Here's the NQ on the right. It worked very nicely. It's going to hit that second target. The trap trade, you can see, is very slow to take place. And that's one of the reasons why it's extremely difficult to risk $500 on that trade. That's the amount of risk our testing has shown would be necessary. Maybe 400, you could shrink it to 400 with a slightly smaller stop. That's something we'll have to discuss and test. But the idea, the trap trade, is you want to see reversals. You want to see a burst and a reversal. And this trade sometimes takes, our testing showed, 2 minutes before anything happens. And it was it's a minute and a half, and then finally it starts reversing a bit. You can see it, and then it doesn't, and then it does. I mean, last week, the NQ hit its target, and the trap trade, it really struggled to be a profitable trade. Eventually, it got there. And again, that's the size of the stop is very important. The size of that stop was critical. Hang on, I'm sorry. The size of that stop was critical, but it did get there. This video is a little bit corrupted. So it was almost, like we said, 2 minutes, and it really hadn't done any of its reversing yet. And then finally, Let me see if I can show it. 2 minutes and 44 seconds. It finally starts to make that reversal. Now, we already had made some money on the NQ in theory, so it was not a fantastic trap trade setup last week. It was not a loser, but again, I'm looking for setups that inspire very strong confidence, and testing is what gets you there. Okay, so we're going to look at a trap trade on the right and a breakout on the left. So I'll probably manage the left NQ breakout first. JOLTS, my gut feeling, this is just a gut feeling, that there will be a lot of job openings. So many parts of the economy are opening up. So many places are hiring. I think that the news is going to be a lot of job openings is good news, considered good news. Theoretically, good news would make the NQ move up. Plus, you also have a high of a day fairly close on the NQ. Fairly close, 30 points away. But I mean, in the old days, that was, an unknown if it would even get there. And then gold is making new highs as we speak. Normally, let's say the news was great. We would used to expect gold to go down on great news. Gold's up more than $10 already today. Gold has had a life of its own for quite a while. It has not traded in an expected manner for us often. It's been very challenging to trade. And we are thinking of some other alternatives also, slightly different or different setups, different ways to trade, because gold's been behaving the way it's been behaving. And we have different setups in our software that give us the opportunity to not do a breakout or a trap, but we could actually enter possibly after the news, depending on a couple of different things. Gold has been trending a lot. In other words, one of the reasons we've been noticing that gold hasn't been responding to the news direction you'd expect is because it's responding to its trending directions. The NQ has a little bit more of a tendency to give you a quick response to a report, and then it often goes back to the way it was trending. But we'll see what happens today. The idea is if it moves up, I want to watch the NQ. The news is out. It's very positive, which I thought it would be. Gold is going, in my opinion, the wrong direction. And the NQ is not responding to the news. It should go up. Now, gold filled on the upside for the trap trade. So now it's either going to fill that second tier. The NQ should probably be canceled. Okay. I'm going to let it play, but to me, it's a cancel because you had no response. All right. There should have been a response. There wasn't. So I would call that a canceled trade, the NQ. Now, the trap trade, it filled the first tier. You've got a profit. If it drops down, you want to make $100. You're risking so much money. But you see what I mean about the behavior? You're just not getting that explosive, now the NQ is starting to respond a little bit. I mean, I do think the NQ probably is going to test the high. Gold, I didn't cancel that tier because it's very slow, this trade, to do the reversal. Remember, I said 2 minutes. So now you've got both tiers filled. If gold just keeps moving up, you're going to have an awful trade. But if it reverses, you're going to have the potential for a nice profit. We'll watch the video right after this trade is done. So right now, you've got a little bit of profit coming out of the trap trade. The question is, how much can you grab? Is it going to keep going back up? Gold really should go down because of the news. It struggles to do that. And you can grab yourself a decent profit by closing out the trade. Okay. So with all that risk, the trap trade looks like it's working on gold. So one way that you can reduce your risk, and if you stayed in the NQ for a very long time, the NQ worked to the upside. Now, normally for us, it didn't look like it was responding, to be honest. Let's look at the video. But you could have, had you stayed in, looks like the NQ would have worked also. So let me just remove these. But so the testing looks extremely promising. I mean, it looks like our setups have very good potential. Let's look at the video and analyze what happened. I mean, we've been trying for a long time to find setups that look like they're going to work on JOLTS. And even with a big offset, 367,000 more job openings, it didn't blow through your stop on the trap trade. In other words, what's the worst thing that could happen in a trap? It'll just blow through your stops. It'll explode in one direction and won't even pay any attention whatsoever to a reversal. But look at the NQ. If you just sat on that trade based on the good news, it would have worked for you. And let's analyze the video, and I'll show you why I did what I did real quickly here. So we set up our trades, and you come to the trade. Now let's watch the NQ. So normally with a trade that has a good news result, good meaning there was a lot more jobs created than expected, that should give you a response, right? So here's today. And the reason that I walked away from the NQ, the news came out, the 10 o'clock entry was safe, but you had no, it was as if the market ignored it. 15 seconds, 20 seconds, let's see. And then it started dropping a little bit, not a lot. It was hanging out. So our order, our fill was, I'll put my cursor right where the fill would have been. Then it started dropping, which really made me think it just wasn't going to go in the right direction. So let's see how long it would have taken for the NQ to fill, because that's good info to know for your journal. So this was our fill point, 13,600, and it took a minute, it looks like. Yep, it was about a minute after the report, which is a pretty long time. You had what I would call an initial scare, little bit of a scare, but it really didn't get close to your stop out. Okay, if you look at it, you could have said to yourself, well, you know what, the news is pretty darn good. The NASDAQ is slightly up. I'm going to hang out and stay in the trade and take the risk. The NASDAQ risk is $125 a contract. Not that bad a risk. And if you had done that, that trade would have worked. Okay. The trap trade, and we've discovered with JOLTS, you have to be very patient. Try to let it fill both tiers. So now you're in the trade before the news. Your orders are on the chart before the news. And you're kind of just sitting tight, waiting for a fill. It goes up and fills you to the short side. Okay. Goes up and fills you to the short side. So there's my first tier or order filled short. And it's only 25 seconds. And our testing has shown you're probably not going to get a reversal for another minute at least. So wait and see if it'll hit that outer tier. You can always cancel the outer tier with the cancel button. That cancels the outer tier. If you start to get a big reversal, look, you had 70 bucks, you could have taken a profit there. But we also know it's not even a minute. And this report, its history has been showing us, at least as of late, that it starts to reverse a little bit later. So there's still a chance it might fill that outer tier. And then sure as we're sitting here, it's going to go up and hit that tier. And now you're looking for the reversal. It's a minute and a half. Starting to get to that time period where we should get a reversal. And you could see it's definitely not bursting up. You have the news on your side. It was positive, which could give gold a push to the downside just for the length of the trade, 3 or 4 minutes. And there you go. So you've got potential decent profit. And if you waited on the NQ, you could have had a really nice trade today. So our setups look very interesting. They look very interesting. So we'll keep them in our back pocket for next month. Make a note. You got to make a note that it's very important to note that the NQ took almost a minute for the breakout to work. It took like 58 seconds. And it gave you a slight scare, but it never got close to the stop. So given the news, it could have kept you in the trade. And then the trap trade pretty much worked according to the testing. It just took its darn time. It filled the outer tier, and it did work. And then look at the NQ reversing now. Interesting. All right. Any questions, folks? So you have two different setups that we tested. And interestingly, they look good. They definitely look good. This morning, I tested that 8 o'clock report, short-term energy outlook, and it had no impact on the price of oil. I've been looking at that as a potential new report, and it doesn't have much potential, unfortunately. All right, folks, we will be back at 4 for API. Folks on YouTube, if you like what you saw and you like learning about trading events, different methods that we use, give us a like and sign up for our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you know the next time we're here. Okay, folks, I'll see everybody at 4 for the API report. Okay, everybody, thank you.